Hey, how you doing? This is Tom, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show, and we are back on the air, kinda. Been a hectic week with the hurricane, and I'm going to warn you in advance, this show is not going to be about radios or gadgets. It's just going to be me babbling about my experience with the hurricane this week. And I have all kinds of notebooks on different subjects. And I have these smaller notebooks, which are day-to-day journals, and just what's happening. Since I'm getting older and I don't remember what I had for breakfast, I have to write everything down. So I kept a journal during the storm, and I'm going to use that as kind of a reference to let you know what happened. Let me see. Back on September 6th, it became evident that Hurricane Irma was going to hit Florida. They didn't know exactly where, but they knew it was going to hit Florida. And back then, this is the map of the prediction on September 7th at 8 a.m. And at that time, I'll see if I can zoom in here so you can see a little better. At that time, it was, it was way down here off of Dominican Republic, and the track was to hit or make landfall at Miami, Florida, right directly at Miami, Florida. So I was like, I feel sorry for those people in Miami, but we are way over here on the west coast of Florida. So I can zoom in a little more. And we would probably get not too high winds, and plus we're on the west side of the storm, which is where the less severe winds are, as opposed to being on the east side of the hurricane. So things were looking pretty good as far as being hit here in Florida and being hit hard. So I wasn't too concerned. Then, as the week progressed, this track across Florida kept moving over to the west. And then and let me look at my notes. So I was still getting prepared, because even in like mild storms, say 40 to 45 mile an hour winds, we usually lose power. So I was going to prepare for at least the loss of power. So I have a generator. It's a 5.5 kilowatt generator. And so I went and got it out of storage, and with the help of my neighbor. And I got gas for it. I have two 5-gallon gas cans. So I got gas for it. Gassed up my truck and my cars. So I thought I was ready to go. And that was on September 7th. So then, as I was saying before, the track started moving. Every 10 or 12 hours, it moved closer and closer to me. So it didn't look too good. One thing that I was concerned with my old house is that it was built quite a while ago, 45 years ago, and it's a 2-story house. And I have 3 or 4 huge trees that are backed up against the house that over the years have grown and are 20 and 30 feet tall. I was concerned about that. Okay, then on the next day, September 8th, the track now was up through the middle of Florida, right through the middle of Florida. It's hitting like Key West and then just tracking right up the middle. And the winds were, I think, about 125 miles an hour. So the winds had gone down a little bit. So I was starting to get concerned. So I decided that if it did continue to move, the track continued to move towards the west to Tampa Bay, where I live, I might lose that roof on the second story. So I thought, I should move or bag up the stuff that I can that's on the second story, a la a whole bunch of radios. So I bagged up a whole bunch of the portable radios. Now the big radios, such as, let me see if I can kind of scan here real quick. And whoops, I'm sorry, hang on, I gotta take the zoom out some. Okay, so up there is a big Collins radio, and that thing weighs at least 50 pounds. So I wasn't going to move that. I should have, but I couldn't physically move it. So it was like, well, maybe I'll cover it up or something. So that one didn't get moved. I did have on several different bookshelves in 3 of the 4 bedrooms up here, I did have portable radios. Things like the PL660 and that kind of size. Plus, I had on my desk, which I have not put back. Right here is where my Grunic 750 is. It's still in the bag. I haven't dug things out yet. I've kind of moved a few things back and got some things working. Got the computers back online, so I'm still not completely moved back. But, and I look down, I'll see if I can show you down here. And there's are some of the bags that contain the radios. I wanted to get them downstairs, plus I wanted to get them in bags to protect them from water that might come down from the 2nd floor. So I did that. And I knew from past experience we were going to lose power. I just didn't know when. Well, let me see, when we check my notes here, I think it was... Okay, let me back up a little bit. My sister and brother-in-law live down in St. Pete, and they have a very, very old house. I mean, it's probably 60 years old. It's all, I think it's all wooden frame. And at the time, their son and his family were living with them because they had lost where they were living. It got shut down. So they had moved in, this is a couple of months ago, no big deal. Okay, anyway, so they were, my brother, my sister and my brother-in-law and one of their sons had been living there, and then their other son moved in, da-da-da-da. Well, his son was concerned about them losing their roof. And they're very old. You know, I'm old, and they're very old. So they really need somebody to take care of them. So they felt at that time, when the track was still in the middle of the middle of Florida, that my house would be a safe place for them to go, because they were going to head north, and my sister and son-in-law cannot travel that far. They can, they just can't travel that far. So they brought them here, and I thought everything was okay as long as the track is through the middle of Florida. We'll be okay here. Well, that night the track moved. I think this was, let's see. Let me see. So that was steel and power cable. Okay, on September 10th, we still had power. The winds hadn't reached here. We still had power. I'm trying to find out. Maybe I didn't write it down. That could be. But I think it was like the 9th when the track moved, indicating that it was going to now come over Tampa Bay or Clearwater, where I live. I called them back and I says, it's no longer a safe place at my house. You need to come get them. And they're just going to have to travel the hour and a half to where you are. And I asked them before I did that. I asked them if they would go to a shelter, and they said no, we can't. We can't tolerate a shelter in our physical condition. So my wife drove them and met his son about halfway between where they were and where we are, and dropped them off, and they went up there to be safe. So now the next situation was that my wife's mother, who lives in Tampa, again right in that zone of direct hit or passing over of the hurricane, and she's by herself, and she refused to leave. And the main reason is that she has numerous animals, and she didn't want to go off and leave them. She got birds, she got dogs, she got cats. She didn't want to go off and leave them. So we decided that my wife should go and stay with her in case the power went off or something like that, because she has no generator or anything. So my wife did that. So the night, and let me see which night that was, and then I have to go to another journal. That one filled up. Let's see. Okay, I made a list of things I need to do since it's now predicted to come right here. So I moved the radios downstairs. I turned off my computers so that they would be running when power quit. That happened to me once and was pretty bad. And I moved my truck out of our driveway because we have two big overhanging trees over our driveway. So I moved it across the street to my neighbor's yard, which is clear of all the trees. And my other neighbor did the same thing. So my neighbor across the street was a parking lot. So so before that, and I don't have it on there. So the 10th, yeah, September 10th, when I was filming my last video with my cell phone, you could see in that video power went out. So that was, I believe, was September 10th at 6 p.m. We lost power. Now, the hurricane was not supposed to get close to us for at least another 24 hours. So we didn't have really major winds, which has been typical for my area, that we don't have to have major winds to lose power. So we lost power. I got the generator going. I hooked up the minimum things that need to be hooked up, which we have 2 refrigerators. So I hooked them up. I hooked up some lights. I hooked up some fans, and I hooked up a battery charger so I could keep the batteries charged. And I hooked up a charger for my cell phone and tablet. Although I found out, and somebody warned me about this several shows ago, I was using these cheap power cubes for the charging the devices. And if you go back a couple of shows, you'll see what I'm talking about. And they didn't, just as somebody warned me, they didn't like dirty power that was coming from the generator. And I think they were providing an over voltage because I was noticing my cell phone battery was getting quite warm. So I immediately took that out of the loop, threw it in the trash. And it had worked for 6 months or so with clean power. So threw those away. So I was home the night of the storm that hit here. My wife was over in Tampa, and my brother and sister were up north of Florida, north in Florida, but up north. So that's what the situation was when the storm came. I did not have power when the storm came, and the storm hit early in the morning, Sunday morning, or Monday morning, I guess, Sunday night, Monday morning. And the track, when it was close to hitting, moved back at the last minute east. So it was moving for me, in a good direction. It was moving away from me, and it was moving east. So now the track was like, about 40 miles east of me, which meant the winds here would be greatly reduced. Instead of 125, they'd be more like 90. So that was great for me. Now, it wasn't great for other people, and I feel for those people that got hit directly, especially where it hit at Naples, Florida. That's where it entered Florida. So we lost power. I had some things working, and I got a I think it's about a 14-inch CRT tube TV that I have. I got it and put it on the generator. I found one of those converter box, TV converter boxes that convert the digital signals that we have now to analog to work with an old TV. I got that hooked up. I used a pair of rabbit ears, and it was downstairs, so I didn't get the advantage of the height being upstairs. And I got one station pretty good. It was still breaking up, but it was, so at times it was good. So I got one station I could monitor what was happening on. So I had that kind of little MacGyver set up, and things were working. So then the storm hit late Sunday, early Monday morning, and the winds were pretty severe, and I didn't hear any trees crashing into my house. And like I said before, I have several older trees, you're talking 40, 50 years old, that are not in great condition because the bugs have gotten to it. And I was almost sure at least one of those would fall. They didn't fall. Pieces of them fell, but not big pieces. So when the sun came up Monday morning, I could see out my front living room window, and it didn't look too bad. There was quite a few little limbs, nothing really major. And so I was, really thankful. So my wife was still over in Tampa, and she was waiting for them to clear the bridges so she could come back across Tampa Bay over here for a while and then go back to her mom's, because her mom now was in the dark with no electricity at all. So that was Monday morning. So this is another miracle that took place. Our neighbors diagonally across the street from us, which were good friends of ours, they left town Wednesday before the storm. They were planning on going out of town anyway, and they just said, well, let's leave early to not get stuck in traffic. So they left early, and they told me to watch over their house, and that if conditions got bad, that we could stay in their house, which is a very, very nice house. And so Tuesday, it wasn't too, Monday, it wasn't too bad because it was still raining a little bit. The temperature had dropped way down to like 72, I think. So it wasn't too bad as far as the heat. So I stayed in my house with fans blowing on me. And then my wife came over that afternoon, stayed with me for a while, and then she went back to her mom's. And I might not have these dates exactly right, because it's all kind of a blur right now. And so we were okay. So we didn't have to go to our neighbors. We were okay. We didn't want to do that. You didn't, go over there and disturb their house. And so that was kind of a last resort. Well, Tuesday, it didn't rain. Excuse me, it didn't rain here. And it started getting really hot, and the humidity was through the roof because of all the rains previous days. So it started getting a little uncomfortable. So Tuesday, it was still cool enough that we could stay in our house. So we stayed in our house. Actually, again, Tuesday, my wife stayed with her mom, and I was home with our 4 cats. We have 4 cats. But we were doing okay. Wednesday, it really started getting warm, and I was still here in my house Wednesday morning. My wife was over in Tampa, so I decided at least I would go over to my friend's house and stay during the heat of the day, and then come back at night. And that way, I would just sit in the living room and use her Wi-Fi. Now, that side of the street lost power for 2 days. I think it was 2 days. So that was another reason I said, nobody's going over there. They don't have any power over there anyway. And so I think it was the 3rd day. Let me just check my notes here because I'm completely lost at events. Let's see, the 13th. The 13th is when I realized that the generator was generating dirty power and the tablet and the cell phone was not charging properly. Okay, on the 13th, I also had moved over to my friend's house, took my tablet, my cell phone, and moved over there to number one. Since she had power restored, she also has Wi-Fi, and I knew how to get into her Wi-Fi. She told me that. So I got set up over there with a minimum amount of things. During all this time, repeatedly, we contacted our power company, either via cell phones or via the internet or direct calls to the troubleshooters, numerous calls, and reporting that we didn't have any power and when we lost power. And when I was on their website that relates to outages, and I made a report that we were out, it said that it had already been reported in our area that power was out. So for the next few days, every day I would do that just to make sure that they knew we were out, especially from the fact that our neighbors across the street, their power was returned. Now that's not unusual because they're on a different system than we are. So, I kept reporting that. And my neighbors kept reporting that on this side of the street we had no power, especially since the neighbors across the street had power. Okay, about either Thursday or Friday, I began to panic in that when I went on the website that showed a map of outages, we weren't on there. And nobody on our block was on there. So then I made some more calls to the power company, reported we're out, all this stuff. And they said, yeah, okay. And then, let's see if I have it written it down. And all this time I was running on the generator. I don't know if it shows up here. Okay, the 14th we were still in trouble. Somewhere, and I believe it was either Thursday night or Friday morning, we noticed that many of the houses up to the next block, which were without power for a while, now had power. And my wife drove around and saw that the houses behind us had power. And that only, close by, only our street, our side, was without power. So my next door neighbor I saw him outside and he was telling me that he was pretty irate that everybody around us had power except our block. And we knew why, because 3 houses down, a tree had broken and broke the power line. So we knew why. So he made several calls to friends at the city council and woke some people up. And finally, Sunday, I saw a truck go by. So I flagged the guy down and I says, we don't have power. And right behind you in that house there is why. And he says, oh, okay, let me look at my computer. Oh, no, there's no report of outages here. And I'm like, what? No report of outages? And then, so he says, we'll put it in right now and we'll have a crew in a couple hours here. So I went back into my neighbor's house, got on the internet, excuse me, and looked at the map, and there was no report that we were out of power. Now, this exact same thing happened several years ago. I'm losing my voice. When we lost power, same house, same tree fell on the power lines, and we reported an outage, and it never got recorded. And I had to do the same thing I did this time. I had to flag down a truck and point to them that the tree is down, the power lines are down, and the people on this block, the few of them that have generators are running on generators. Same exact scenario. I know it's scary. So anyway, we got power restored yesterday morning, and I started bringing all the things back from my neighbor's house. Excuse me. And setting things up here. I had extension cords all over the house trying to get power to various appliances, and so I started cleaning up that mess, although I did wait a couple hours to make sure the power wasn't going to go away again. And so I got that all put away and cleaned up so somebody didn't trip over it, because it was just everywhere, scattered everywhere. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. On Friday, before the storm hit, I was concerned about getting gas, which is always a problem with a storm. Where can you get gas? And most of Pinellas County, where I live, was dark. So you couldn't get gas even if gas stations had it. I had already filled up my SUV, which holds about 25 gallons of gas. So I had plenty of gas in the SUV, but I had no way of getting it out. I could not find my siphon hose, which I had used in the past. And the neighbors didn't have one, the stores didn't have one, so I couldn't get. So Friday, I got on Amazon, ordered a siphon hose, and paid overnight shipping, which means it would have gotten here by Friday. It didn't make it. It was shipped and on its way, but I guess something in the chain to get it to my house, they shut down and it didn't get here. So I didn't get it. The day, let's see, was it? No. So a couple of days later, that was like Monday, it arrived. Well, by Monday, not most, but a lot of the power was restored, and many of the gas stations, well, a few of the gas stations were up and operational. So I was able to take my 2 5-gallon gas tanks and continue to get gas every day. And I would get up at 3 a.m. in the morning and go to the gas station when nobody else was there. Otherwise, there were really long lines, and get gas. Just go right in and I get gas and come right home. So that's what I did. So I was able to keep the generator going. I ran the generator like 4 to 6 hours at a time, and then I would turn it off and let it cool down for a couple hours and then start it back up. The problem was the only covered area that I had for the generator was the small front porch. It's not enclosed, but it is covered porch right outside my front window. So that's where I put the generator, and that's where I put it in the past. And I ran the power cords in the window right there. Now, to keep the carbon monoxide from coming in the window, I put a blanket over that window on the outside of the house. And I put a carbon monoxide detector just inside the house near that window so that I would know if it was getting too much carbon monoxide in the house. And one evening, I think it was like maybe Wednesday or Thursday night, the detector went off. And I said, oh no, I'm in trouble now, I can't run the generator anymore. Well, it turned out in that room, I also hooked up to the generator a ceiling fan to keep the air circulating. And my wife, trying to conserve power, had turned that off, and so the carbon monoxide was just settling in that room. So I cleared the carbon monoxide monitor, got it to quit beeping, and at the same time I turned on that ceiling fan, and then within 5 minutes it was cleared out. So I felt safe again. So that was kind of the setup, and like I say, we finally got power yesterday after 6 or 7 days without power. Thank goodness for our neighbor that she had left town, or they had left town, and allowed us to use their house, which did have power after a couple of days. We made it through the worst days, which were Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, through the heat. It was about 87 degrees in my house, because like I say, my house is an older house. Many of the windows don't work anymore, and I never bothered to fix them because we always keep the house closed up and the air conditioned on, so I couldn't open that many windows. So I think that about summarizes everything. I'm so thankful for the fact that the hurricane turned at the last minute, and that we had in use of the neighbor's house, which we had to go back and straighten it all up, because she normally keeps her house immaculate, so we had to keep it all, try to get it all back the way she left it, and vacuum the floors and everything so it looked like she left it. I think that's about it. I've got the computers up and running this morning, and I will plan on getting things put away, and it'll probably be like Tuesday. I'll try to get back to my regular shows about radios and gadgets. So that's it. Thanks for everyone that sent me an email or a comment. I am way behind on replying to comments. I was able to reply there for a while, and then it just became overwhelming. I've got 2,500 emails that came in that I haven't read, so if you sent me an email, I may or may not have read it. I read some of them with my tablet, but I skipped over most of them. So we made it. Thanks for your support, and we're back. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Wow, 32 minutes. I'm sorry I rambled so long.